Hey, I'm Scott Alexander, and I'm a real estate agent with Coldwell Banker Patterson Properties in San Angelo, Texas. And I'd like to visit with you today about real estate agency. I've been a real estate agent for 4.5 years. I'm a retired high school teacher and coach, and I find this to be an interesting business. And I'd like to visit with you for a little while this afternoon. Well, agents are employees. I mean, agents are employed by people to help them in the sale or the purchase of a home. Agents have a duty to whoever employs them. Let's say, for example, someone represents a seller. Then their duty is to get the best price, terms, conditions for the seller. And that's who they work for. So if you're a buyer and you call the agent on the sign, then you must understand that he's working for the seller. If you were to tell him anything, his job would be to run in there and tell the owner of the home what you just said. So you must be very careful about your relationship with an agent. It's in the interest of a buyer to have someone help them in the process. Think about it. I, as a real estate agent last year, was involved in 61 transactions. That's over one a week. You might be a buyer and you're involved in your first home purchase, or you bought one 10 years ago and you're looking to sell and buy now. So I should know more about it than you do. And you're looking to find someone whom you can trust, whom you're looking for assistance in the most important and biggest purchase you'll ever make. So you ought to ask, 1, about their experience, 2, about their integrity, 3, what they're going to do to help you. Really, it's an employee-employer relationship, and you're the employer. Yes, a real estate agent can represent both parties, and the law tells us in that instance, let's say I represent a seller on one hand, and he's employed me to sell his house, and he's paying me a commission, and I have a signed buyer's representation agreement with somebody on the other hand, and that buyer happens to want to buy the house of the seller I represent. Now, who do I favor? The answer is neither one. I'm obligated to inform both parties of this relationship in writing, and if they are both happy with it, then we can proceed. And I'm a go-between, an intermediary. I pass information back and forth between buyer and seller, and they'll make the decision. At all times, the buyers, the employers, and buyers and sellers, the employers are in charge of that. If my rule of thumb is if anybody's uncomfortable with that, I'll find one or the other a different agent. If they feel that they can't be represented adequately. You must think that a real estate agent can be employed by a seller, usually through a signed listing agreement, to sell their house. Then his job is to get the best price, terms, conditions, and so on for the seller. A buyer can also employ an agent, and his job, he can usually do what's called a signed buyer's representation agreement. In rare instances, an agent can represent both buyer and seller. And very often, a company can represent buyer and seller. For example, Coldwell Banker Patterson Properties, for whom I work, we represent, we sell about 63% of our own listings. So it's highly likely, if you list your house with us, that our company and an agent from our company could bring a buyer. And in which case, we would be obligated to notify you in writing. In other words, get a signed agreement with your realtor before you enter into any kind of contractual agreement. Understand that the real estate agent needs to fully explain all that's involved.